Everybody, the Simple Handicap for Wednesday, December 4th. Thank you for making me a part of your morning. Hopefully, your Wednesday is off to a fantastic start as we get things rolling this morning with the market rundown to get you on your way. Things kick off tomorrow for NFL Week 14 with a great game. Green Bay Packers on the road to take on the Detroit Lions. We're still sitting at an expensive 3 or cheap 3.5 for the Lions across the board, 3 minus 125 compared to 3.5 even money. Total still between 51 and 52. Not a lot of movement on this game. We do have a couple of things to talk about. It looks like both Carlton Davis and Emmanuel Mosley will be back in the secondary for the Detroit Lions. A big boost to the secondary. Now, the health not looking so great up front on the defensive line, along with DJ Reader. Two other starters look like they could miss. Interesting kind of development that we are seeing with this going on, because now we have projections coming up from projection services for props in this game. On Thanksgiving Thursday, for the Green Bay Packers, who played the Miami Dolphins, Anthony Walker was out. There were some guys banged up on the defensive front. Obviously, defensive guys got hurt as the game went on for the secondary, but that wasn't necessarily factored in. What we did see initially was a wave of money on the over for Josh Jacobs carries at 16 and 16.5. It got up to 17.5. At 17.5, there was under money that came in on his prop total for carries. The projection services that have posted numbers so far have Josh Jacobs' numbers for this game incredibly high. Peak numbers for him this season. Prop totals are living so far a little bit lower. He is getting a limited designation so far this week in practice for the Green Bay Packers. He's been used a ton, but Matt LaFleur has also been saying that he's planning on getting multiple backs going in this run game that he's developed for the Packers. Well, if you think about the Lions' injuries, up front, you have guys banged up. In the secondary, getting healthier, this looks like a big run game for the Packers. And so we'll see. Do the higher projections compared to the lower prop prices that have been slightly bet under so far have a bit of a battle back and forth on Josh Jacobs, along with his injury status? I mean, there's a lot going on here for props. Very interesting game. As I talked about yesterday, I like the Lions' side in this one. As we jump over to Sunday, it's the Atlanta Falcons on the road at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings were going to be a play I mentioned on Follow the Money with Mitch and Pauly, and was planning on talking about this game. It was one that was brought up as worth mentioning. This was at 4.5. Just as about to go on air around 1:30, this jumps up, gets as high as 6 at a couple of sports books. And so a wave of money comes in. Price gets pushed up. We're now settled back in this morning, 5.5 across the board, 46 to 45.5. A couple lines of thought here that I'll discuss a little bit further on the live stream preview later today at 9 a.m. Minnesota at the time was laying 4.5. When you're thinking about the game last week for the Vikings at home hosting the Cardinals, they closed 3.5. Nobody's making the Cardinals just 1 point better on the neutral than the Atlanta Falcons. But the thing for me is I think about the Falcons. They played a Denver Broncos team that's very good up front with the pass rush, generates a lot of pressure just a couple of weeks ago, and it looked horrible for Kirk Cousins in the pocket. I mean, this offense couldn't do anything. And now I do believe that there is an injury problem that is limiting what he can do on the field. I think we saw that last week against the Chargers. It was quite evident. There's been some fallout from that. All that considering here, with so much familiarity, I thought the Vikings became a pretty appealing side as I worked through the game. At 5.5, I would still play it, certainly. Don't know if this is going to get back to 6 or higher. So at this point, you have a decision. Wait and see if this does come back, or play it right now. Just the way that we're seeing games being bet so far this week, a lot of back and forth on a lot of games, not too different from other weeks. We saw clear resistance at 6. And so at 5.5, you're playing here pretty high at the peak. But it is something that we've seen at 6 and come back. I do think 5.5 is still good, but you may get a flat 5 a little bit later in the week. New Orleans on the road at the New York Giants. Saints 5 at Chris, 5 at Buckeye, 5 at FanDuel and DK. We are still seeing a couple of 4.5s in the market. Have been back and forth between 4.5 and 5 the last couple of days. Total in this game holding steady, though. 40.5 left to right across the screen. Jacksonville on the road at the Tennessee Titans. 3.5 remains the price for the Titans. 39.5 remains the total across the board. Half a point of movement on the total. We saw the side much higher. This has come back since earlier in the week when it was around 5.5 at a lot of books. Not a big news day on Tuesday. Not a lot swirling around, not a lot of changes. Las Vegas on the road at Tampa Bay. We talked about this yesterday, how the Raiders were getting bet so far. and they took money yesterday as a group was playing their way down the board. We saw the Raiders taken out at 7. This is now down to 6.5. The total continues to creep up, 46.5, shaded towards 47. I referenced the not a big news day because honestly, outside of the Packers and the Lions and the suspension for Al-Shaair, probably the biggest news when it comes to impacting props and bets for the weekend yesterday specifically was that Sincere McCormick was signed from the practice squad. I'm not exaggerating with that. He got a lot of praise from film guys Monday and Tuesday that I saw coming up through the column. So we know the Raiders want to run the football. Easier said than done against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front. They're going to give attempts anyway. Sincere McCormick stock on the rise potentially going into this game. Keep an eye on projections. Keep an eye on prop markets. Cleveland on the road at Pittsburgh opened where expected after the Cleveland Browns lose, and you get the full Jameis experience on Monday Night Football. We are seeing this game Steelers minus 6.5 for very cheap sevens. Total holding steady at 44 across the board. Open slightly lower, around 43.5 at a lot of the prominent bookmakers on the board. This is now up half a point as Steelers totals continue to get bet over, and if it's going to be a full Jameis experience again, well, probably see this total continue to climb up a little bit further. Carolina on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's chalk for me. Played the Eagles 12.5. We're seeing 13 at Chris, 12.5 almost everywhere else except for Buckeye on the board. Total from 44.5 up to 46, and that's been the ceiling so far this week. New York Jets on the road at the Miami Dolphins. We'll get some key injury news a little bit later for both of these teams in the secondary. I think those are very important practice reports to watch, especially relative to the total in this game, which got as high as 46. We are now back to 44.5. So again, another game, another movement, another back and forth spot as we see this total coming back down. That would typically reflect that we are seeing injury reports perhaps look better than expected for both of the secondaries. We'll get the first from each team a little bit later today. Seattle on the road at the Arizona Cardinals. We are seeing in this game the threes taken out yesterday by a pro bettor on the screen. I talked about this a lot. I haven't played anything on it personally, but I'm looking at that number and saying, hey, the way the Seahawks have been playing the last couple of weeks, I'm surprised that this has not been bet. And yesterday it was bet. The threes were taken out. And this morning we're at 2.5 flat for the most part across the board. Total in this game down to 44.5 and shaded to the under. It's been under money all week between these two teams in a rivalry game being played in a short duration of time from the first meeting. Typically spots that draw under money and skew under the total. Buffalo on the road at the Los Angeles Rams. 4.5 is the number across the board with one exception. Bet Chris has been 5 on Buffalo for the last couple of days. We'll know more about Matthew Stafford a little bit later today. We'll see what he is dealing with the lateral ankle sprain and what the impact might be coming into this game on Sunday. Initially, it was reported not much of an impact. Easier said than done when you're dealing with Sean McVay and trying to discern what's real and what's not for injuries. He is as good at disguising news out of pressers as any coach in the entire league. Chicago on the road at the San Francisco 49ers. 3.5 was viewed as the basement for the 49ers in this game as we're seeing this number back to 4 and shaded slightly higher. Total from 44.5 down to 44 shaded under. Big one for me to watch in this game is Trent Williams. What are we going to get from him? Shanahan said that he is not healing as the team anticipated. He obviously has the tragic scenario going on with the family issue that him and the wife suffered this week, and so that's something to monitor as well. Without him in the lineup and this back situation that the 49ers are going through, that's a problem. And so keep an eye on the status of Trent Williams in the first practice report we get for the 49ers today. I would be very shocked if he is participating. Something to watch for in a team that is just riddled with injuries, but certainly a chance to get several guys back on the defensive side this week. LA Chargers on the road at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs 4-point favorites for the most part across the board, with the total down as low as 42.5 from the opener of 44. Great note from Daniel Popper that broke down just how extreme the impact of Ladd McConkey has been so far this season. And based on True Media and the reporting, when targeting Ladd McConkey this season, Justin Herbert has a success rate of 53.1%. To put that into context, that is nearly equal at 53.3% to the best success rate team in the NFL the Detroit Lions. When Herbert has targeted any other player on the field, he has a passing success rate of 41.6%. So simply put, when targeting Ladd McConkey, the Chargers playing like one of the best passing teams in the NFL. When targeting anybody else, they look like a bottom 3 team throwing the football in the NFL. McConkey has a shoulder and a knee injury going on this week. His status vital to the Chargers in this game. What are we going to get from him the next couple of days at practice? I would be very surprised if he is participating today. On the Chiefs side, I'm curious to see if Humphreys is on the practice field and what level of participation he is going to be in coming off of his injury that he suffered last season. If he is a go at left tackle and McConkey is out, as we've been talking about this week, this number is going to close higher than 3.5. Monday Night Football, it's the never-ending whirlwind with Cincinnati Bengals totals. It got to 50, and as expected, the market said, that was too much. We're back to 49.5 shaded under. A wave of under money comes onto the board. Every week, it's happening. Bet over early, numbers creep up on Bengals games. You get to Tuesday, Wednesday, money comes in on the under. It's crazy how it keeps happening. These Bengals games are flying over the total. Keep an eye tomorrow as we talk about, and I'll remind everybody on the podcast, you're looking at CeeDee Lamb's status in this game specifically. But I'm blown away by how these Bengals games are being bet, especially on the total. But this is a reflection of everything that is going on league-wide, with a lot of these games being bet back and forth. There's more back and forth on games than any other season in the last 17 that I have been betting on the NFL. And as we get to the end of the season, it seems like that is only going to continue. Last week, a bit of a reprieve in that. This week, not so much. There's a lot of back and forth. And this total, certainly surprising to see that to some extent with the under money coming in on a Bengals game. And the way they're playing, I mean, they're getting everybody over the total. But nothing on this one for me. As reminded, everybody at the top of the show, live stream preview, 9 a.m. Pacific. Keep an eye on the link. I'll have everybody updated on that, and then it'll be on the podcast feed around 11 a.m. Pacific time on Apple or Spotify for those of you that prefer to listen to the audio version. That'll do it for me today. Have a fantastic Wednesday, everybody. We'll chat to you on the live stream preview, and then again, bright and early tomorrow morning.